Hello and welcome back to The Path of Milo. I'm One Winter. I'm a BJJ black belt with a master's degree in sports science and health, and today we're going to be talking about mobility for Jiu Jitsu. Some people like to call Jiu Jitsu murder yoga because of the way we tend to fold each other up and put each other into positions where things tend to break if you don't yield. So participation in this practice requires a great deal of mobility and flexibility to not before the submission is actually put on. So we'll be talking about why you should pay attention to flexibility and mobility training as something to supplement your jiu-jitsu with. Not just to avoid breaking too early, but also to give you more opportunities when you're attacking and when you're defending, and also when you're escaping. Because if you have more range of motion and you have control of your joints and you're understanding how your muscles are able to elongate and how much force it takes for them to not be able to hold the position anymore, you're going to have way more options. The problem that we sometimes run into is a lot of people think that the best way to stretch and get flexible is by doing yoga. And although there are many forms of yoga, most of the practices that are taking into jiu-jitsu as a way to get flexible doesn't always back up the flexibility with the strength you need in these extended positions. So what sometimes happens is you actually end up getting more vulnerable because you're able to stretch your muscles more and get into these extreme positions. But if you don't have the strength to back it up, you might actually end up being more prone to getting muscle strains. Another thing that is quite common that we see is that the way we martial artists and especially grapplers tend to think about stretching is that it's something that we do as a cool down. So we do the class, we do the sparring, and then whenever class finishes, we'll sit and we'll stretch to cool down, which is great. But if you're actually trying to increase your range of motion, your strength in these positions, and your control over your joints in these fully elongated and extreme ranges of motion that Jiu-Jitsu requires, then you might actually need to have a different approach. The thing is this: if you're an adult trying to get more flexible, more mobile, then it's going to be way harder than if you're a kid, because our movement patterns, our mechanical structures like our joints, and muscles, and tendons have settled and they've been grooved into certain patterns through years of movement. Where if you're a kid, then nothing is really settled yet and you're way more moldable than if you're an adult. So if you're trying to get more flexible as an adult, you're going to probably have to prioritize this type of practice for an extended period of time to really improve your capabilities. But if you treat it like strength training with reps, seconds, and sets, then over time you will see improvements. And although it might take 10 years for you to get extremely flexible if you're doing a dedicated practice, if you do something for 3 or 6 months, you will see huge improvements and it's going to translate into your game as well. I would encourage you to think of stretching as you need to prioritize and spend time in these positions that you're trying to improve and accumulate enough time spent in these positions with enough load to allow your body to adapt to being in these positions. And the adaptation involves your nervous system being okay with you being in a stretched position. It involves your muscles and tendons and ligaments to be able to mechanically stretch into these positions without breaking. And it requires your muscles, tendons, and ligaments to have enough strength to also be able to pull yourself back out of these positions. And all of this creates safety for the brain that will then allow you to move in and out of these positions without your brain going AWOC and just creating more tension. And although you might feel that you're getting folded in class a few times a week, and it does provide a stimulus for you to actually get more flexible, it's very unpredictable and it's probably also one-sided because most people tend to favor one side over the other whenever they're doing certain techniques. And if you look at this, if you start to pay attention to it, you'll probably see that whenever you're passing, you have one side that you are passing to more often than not. And if you pass to the other side, you're probably doing a different type of pass or different type of technique. The same goes for whenever you're playing bottom. You'll probably realize that you're going to be spending more time on one side than the other, which means that you're going to get an unequal amount of stimulus on the left side versus the right side. So if you truly want to become flexible and more movable and able to move into different positions and not just have a very specialized body that allows you to play guard on your right side and mostly pass to your left side, just to give an example, then you're probably going to need to adapt a more structured approach to mobility training. And also, this will allow you to become more comfortable and capable in different positions that you probably haven't explored as much yet. Instead of just surviving whenever someone is putting you into a banana split or crucifix or whatever you get put into that's uncomfortable, electric chair, for instance. The way I approach this and the way I would teach it to you if we were working together is this. There are different types of stretching, and each one of them has its own time and place. So for most people who have not done structured or regular stretching, I would definitely start with passive static stretching to allow you to familiarize yourself with different positions, spend time in the positions, and also allow your nervous system to calm down before we start to add complexity to it. And the passive static stretching is what we see most people do after class. Like people will sit in a straddle position and they'll sit and they'll just stretch. They'll go into the position and just hang out there for a while. And this is great. This is a great starting point. And we can explore different positions and different ranges of motion that we want to improve. Then the next layer is that we're going to start to add contractions in these elongated positions. So an example would be, say we're doing a hamstring stretch. You would put yourself into the position where you will feel the stretch. Then from there, you're going to push into something that's immovable. So it could be a door frame, it could be a strap that you're holding, or it could be a partner. It doesn't really matter. But you're going to contract the muscles that you're stretching. By doing this, you're going to improve the strength around that joint angle, around 10 degrees going one direction and the other direction of the joint angle. This means that your body becomes more comfortable being in this position because you're telling your brain that it's actually able to contract the muscle and keep your structure safe. So you're familiarizing yourself with being in this position. And you're going to, if you do this enough over time, you're also going to increase the strength of the structures, the tendons, the ligaments, the muscles as well. The next layer that we're going to add will be to add movement and load to these stretches. So if we do the hamstring stretch again, an example of a loaded dynamic stretch would be the one-legged Romanian deadlift. So you would be standing on two legs, you would lift one leg up, and then you would fold forward, moving around your hip joint until you feel a stretch in your hamstrings on your standing leg. And then you would return to standing. This is a movement that we can load. We can add dumbbells, we can add a barbell, we can add speed to it, but it's going to allow you to dynamically go into the stretch position and then return back out of the position. And it's going to allow you to progressively load this movement pattern. Because whenever you're doing Jiu Jitsu, it's not just you going into a controlled, stretched position. It's sometimes your opponent trying to tap you by putting you into these positions. And sometimes the submission is a muscle stretch, like for instance the electric chair or a banana split. And having strength in these positions and actually being able to resist long enough for you to find a way out might actually help your game. And although the last phase like this, or the last stage, is the most potent, I would still start with the static stretching for most people because it will help create body awareness, it will help create awareness around the positions, and it will still allow for adaptations to take place. And then I'll add complexity as the early adaptation starts to wane off. Whenever we discuss stretching and flexibility, a lot of people will say that passive stretching is ineffective because of the lack of external load and movement. And I do agree to a certain extent that at some point, if we're doing stretching for sport, we need to add the movement, we need to add the load. But for a starting point, the passive static stretching is a great way to start, because you're still going to have gravity pulling your body into the positions, so there is some kind of load. Also, a lot of people have enough internal restrictions to actually prevent you from going into these positions, and allowing you time spent in these positions will give your body time to actually loosen up these structures. So how should you go about this? How should you start? How long should you hold the stretch for? The general recommendation in sports science is that whenever you're doing a static stretch, you need to hold it for 15 to 30 seconds to allow some effect to take place. I would usually start with minimum 30 seconds for these passive static stretching holds. And then from there, I would build up to around 2 minutes per stretch. Personally, whenever I'm working on a position that I'm trying to improve, I find that I need to spend 2 to 3 sets of 1 to 2 minutes in each positions several times a week to actually see improvements. If we're doing the static holds with isometric contractions, we'll usually go for 10 to 30 seconds of contractions, then relaxing, and then doing it again 2 to 3 times in each stretch. So it will amount to a few minutes in each position as well. So it's similar to doing the passive static stretching, but we're adding contractions on top of it. For the more dynamic work, which is the next stage, I'll usually go for 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps, and then I'll add a static active hold at the end. So it means going into the position for reps, in and out, say we're doing the Romanian deadlift again, but then at the end of the set, I'll hold the position at the end, not relaxing, but actually being active in the muscle that I'm trying to stretch before returning to the starting position. I hope this clarifies something for you, and maybe it gives you a starting point to start to apply a structured approach to your stretching, to start to improve your mobility and flexibility, and ultimately transfer into your jiu-jitsu. If you want to follow a structured approach, I've attached a link to my hip mobility program for jiu-jitsu. I've also made it so that it's free for you to go and download and try out. And the only thing I'm asking in return is that if you do the full program, I would love to get your feedback. I would love to hear how it was for you to go through it and what kind of improvements you saw. So I hope that you're going to go and download it, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you for listening in. I look forward to seeing you back here. Until next time.